Started. Well, welcome. Thank you for taking the next 60 minutes to join Idaho Partners for Good today. Our workshops are packed full of practical information, so we'll go ahead and get started with it. Get my slides in order. There we go. Nonprofit Success Lab is sponsored by Idaho Partners for Good. Our mission is to reinvent how people like you and me give, share our expertise, and do greater good together. Our vision is to develop stronger, healthier, and better equipped nonprofits so that they can do more of what they do best. We do that by educating donors to give for more impact and by providing nonprofits with education, coaching, mentoring, evaluation, accountability, and capacity building expertise. The experts we put in front of you here on Nonprofit Success Lab are best in class, and we are constantly learning, retooling, and innovating to stay ahead of changing times. We do record these, and I will put the link to our YouTube channel in the chat once we get started here, if you would like to bookmark that to be able to find the recording easily. And then please share it with any of your nonprofit friends that may also benefit from its content. Today we have Kimbra Shaw is coming to us again to talk about mastering strategic planning to combat mission creep. If you recall last session, she talked about strategic and tactical planning, and today she is sharing more of her expertise in this area to how to keep our strategic plans on target for our mission and our outcomes. Kimbra has over 20 years of experience in fields of sales, business development, and she supports teams by forging strong partnerships and community. Her areas of expertise include facilitation and training, executive coaching, project and change management, and today we will be hearing from her about strategic planning. Take it away, Kimbra.
Oh, thanks, Bethany. I appreciate it. Welcome, everybody. So as we go along here today, if you have any questions or insights, please feel free to use the chat box. Bethany and Blossom have agreed to kind of keep track of that for us. And so we'll grab questions and make sure we get you all the answers that you need. So mission creep happens when nonprofits get distracted by the many, many good things that they could do, and they lose sight of their main thing. In the last session, we did lay out a case. If you'll click one more time, Bethany, kind of an overview of last time. There we go. We talked about how strategic planning, tactical planning, and action items really do help an organization move that bottom line. Well, in today's session, we're going to understand how measuring goals to the bottom line stops mission creep in its tracks. So let's dive in. And then we'll go one more. There we go. So what is your bottom line? Every organization has a bottom line. It's a metric that when it's met, it propels you forward as a sustainable and profitable enterprise. Focusing on the levers that move the bottom line in a nonprofit provides a focused strategic planning lens for the board and the executive directors. And today, I'm going to lay out the tools for finding both your metric and your lever. Your bottom line can always be measured. That's something to keep in mind. That's just a truth about this. If you measure the right bottom line, it'll give you a dashboard report of the health and the trajectory of your organization. So I'm going to give you an example. I serve on the board for Gem Friends. It's a local nonprofit that provides stepping stones for at-risk youth overcoming the odds to be independent and resilient adults. So go ahead and click over. I think we have that on the next slide. Our bottom line metric is at-risk youth becoming resilient adults. Now, I said earlier, your bottom line can always be measured. It should easily drive goals that answer how much, of what, and by when. So in this example, the desired outcome is more than just how many at-risk youth are in the program. It's also who's successfully graduating and over what period of time. And then we go one step further and ask, is the success sustained? Are there results there beyond the program? So you can see there's a lot of measurements that come out of this one bottom line metric. So let's go about finding and learning how to find the right bottom line. It starts with an organization's mission. And here you'll see 3 local mission statements that you'll likely recognize. And while they're all helping a shared demographic of people in need in our community, they all have very different missions. I want us to work together and just practice on identifying, see if we can spot their identifying target. So this was, if you think about the last example in Gem Friends, it was at-risk youth. It was what we had highlighted in yellow. So let's look at these, the Idaho Food Bank, the Boise Rescue Mission, and Catch, and see if we can identify who are they serving. So shout it out. Who wants to take the Idaho Food Bank? If you read the mission, what would you highlight in yellow as their identifying target? I'll give you a hint. It's in the first line.
Idaho's hungry.
Idaho's hungry.
There you go. Good job. All right. How about the Boise Rescue Mission?
Homelessness for men, women, and children.
Keep going. Men,
In
women, and
need.
children in
In
need.
need.
Yeah. There's a very specific demographic. And how about for Catch? Catch is an interesting one. And it's in the second line.
Those without housing building, or those without housing?
Those without housing. Go ahead and click over. Let's see how we did. Well, there you go. You nailed it. Very good. All right. So the next part of this is we're going to add the outcome words. So look through those same mission statements and see if you can find the outcome words that might determine their bottom line metric. What is the outcome they're looking for?
Idaho Food Bank is looking to strengthen individuals, families, and communities.
Good. Okay. How about the rescue mission?
Recovery from homelessness.
Okay. And how about in Catch?
Make homelessness rare, brief, and non-reoccurring.
I love that. I love that you pulled that out. Let's click over to the next slide because Catch is a little confusing, but I did capture that as well. But they also had a secondary one in there. See, in that first line, they want to create a safe, healthy, connected community as well. So there's this kind of all over. And because I know Reverend Bill and he wouldn't let me get away without talking about the outcome he wanted to see, I also highlighted teaching the Word of God for the Boise Rescue Mission, because I know that's high on their priority list. And then you nailed it with the Idaho Food Bank. Good job. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about finding a method catalyst. Well, what in the world is a method catalyst? Click over one more time. In the catalyst is something that causes activity between 2 or more persons or things without itself being affected. So click over and I'm going to identify with you a method catalyst. So in the Idaho Food Bank, they have this really cool statement there saying through collective partnerships. And that indicates a method catalyst. They work through collective partnerships. And if you look down at Catch, you'll see we've highlighted in green there another method catalyst, collective partnerships and increased public understanding. So there's an awareness factor that's there. And so if we pull these things together, you'll get on the next slide, these are some summary statements that we've pulled out. So for the Idaho Food Bank, their bottom line metric might look something like collaborate to feed the hungry and strengthen communities. For the rescue mission, it's helping those in need find basic needs and the Word of God. And for Catch, through community partnerships and awareness, empower those without housing to find stable community solutions. So this is just hopefully this exercise will help you as you begin to look at your mission. Bethany, come on over to the next one for me. And again, you're looking only at your mission. Don't be tempted to be sucked in by prevailing needs or buzzwords or whatever the current trend is. Stick to your main thing. And if you don't like where that's leading, well, folks, that's a whole different workshop. But stick to your mission, stick to your mission statement. If your mission, like Hatch's, is a little bit unwieldy, a little bit big, maybe look at some of the taglines that you find yourself saying that express your mission, and that might also help you find that. Go through and highlight your identifying target, your outcome, and a method catalyst if you have one. If you don't, no problem. That's not a big deal. But if you do have one, lead with it. So go back one slide for me, Bethany. You'll see in both of the examples that did have one, it began with. The bottom line metric begins with the method catalyst. When I was the director of Love Inc. in Boise, our mission statement began with mobilizing the church. Anytime I considered approving a service or a new opportunity, my first question to the team was always, where is the church in this? Because they were our method catalyst. All right, let's move forward again. If you're having difficulty finding your bottom line metric, get in a room with your team, get some chart paper and ask this question. How would the Treasure Valley be different if we cease to exist tomorrow? That can be a really powerful way to identify what is your bottom line metric. And if you're still having trouble, consider hiring Idaho Partners for Goods consultants to come alongside and help. There's a link to our website. If you just hit the consultants on our website, you'll be able to access a free discovery to see if we're the right fit for your needs. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about bottom line metrics. Now let's move to our bottom line lever. Once you have the right bottom line metric, it's time to determine what those levers are that move the bottom line right now. And those last two words are really important, right now, because your organization is always ebbing and flowing and growing, expanding. And so just keep in mind, this is time bound. The bottom line metric is the bedrock that your mission is built on, right? So the bottom line levers are the fundamentals without which you would cease to function, maybe even exist. If you stop doing your main thing, what keeps you going forward? Finding your bottom line metric is centered on your mission and your why. So next screen. Finding your levers pulls from your what. You might remember this from our last go round. We talked about this this steampunk chart that was here that talked about your why, your how, and your what. So finding the levers pulls from your what. I'm going to go through these pretty quickly, but please know that if you want to spend some quality time on this, get others involved and really test your answer as you go through looking back, looking in, looking forward, and the 80-20. So when you look back, ask yourself what programs, what processes brought you early success? When you look in, what's missing today that would effectively double your output? What's missing that would effectively double your output? And then looking forward, what's possible? Sit for a minute in a quiet space and ask, where do you want to be in 10 years? What does it look like? What does it feel like? Who's involved? Paint that picture clearly. And then last, arguably the most important, you want to apply the 80-20 rule. And the 80-20 rule is basically the Pareto principle. And next slide, Bethany. That basically says that 80% of our results come from 20% of our effort. And it applies to almost everything. Our programs, our staff, our fundraising. It's really important to evaluate and validate what's bringing you the best return on investment. Unfortunately, many nonprofits get trapped in majoring in the minors. They're pulled into spending their valuable time and limited resources on stuff that's just not important and not profitable. And this is where strong leadership, board engagement, and even outside consultants are the most valuable. Really look at what is bringing and what's moving your ROI. All right, let's move on. So going back to our earlier example, where the bottom line metric is at-risk youth becoming resilient adults, the bottom line 3 levers that Gem Friends identified are funding, meeting youth needs, and success in completing the stepping stones. Okay, so I want to talk for just a minute about funding. I would imagine when you saw that one pop up, it was tempting to say, well, duh, yeah, me too. But is it really? And I'm going to say to you, funding as a lever is completely and totally dependent on where you are as an organization. Have you reached critical mass and become self-sustaining, no longer needing additional investments to remain economically viable? Funding is not a priority level, but retention might be. Are you just starting up, defining your path and your long-term plan? Well, focusing on funding as a lever now could actually be detrimental. Are you at a pivotal point where you're ready to expand, to do more through a new venture? Something that will exponentially grow your ability to deliver on the bottom line metric and your mission? Well, funding might be the right lever for that season. As you define your levers that move your bottom line, pay close attention to if they are permanent or pivotal. And let's apply that to this slide. So next slide, Bethany. You'll see funding here is marked as a pivotal lever, and the other 2 are marked as permanent. Strive for permanent. As a former boss of mine would say, be a lighthouse, not a weather vane. The weather vane changes every time the wind blows, but a lighthouse is steady and constant and focused. If a pivotal lever is necessary for a season, be sure that you have built in a strategy that strives for critical mass. You don't want to live in that constant chaos of we need more, we need more, we need more. Find a way to get to that critical mass. All right, let me pause there for just a second. Do we have any questions or comments at this point? I know we're moving kind of quickly here.
Kimbra, so one of your examples didn't have the catalyst in their mission statement. Is that
Yeah.
something you'd recommend organizations to ensure that they have in their mission statement?
Not at all, Bethany, but that's a really great question. A method catalyst, it's not required by any means. But too many times when an organization has a method catalyst, but they don't activate it, is when they get in trouble. So for instance, I go back to the example of Love Inc. Mobilizing the church was the heart and core of everything that they did. If they set up programs, if they started activating, if they started in-housing all of their things without checking in to the person who was most critical to their mission being accomplished, they would tend to make decisions that may or may not have been in the best interest of their catalysts. So that's why I said, if you have one, be sure and lead with it in designing your strategies. Great question. Any other thoughts? Okay, well, we're going to put it all together here and start the downhill slope. So on our next slide, you're going to see, so now you have your bottom line metric. You've established your levers that move that bottom line. Now what? What do we do with this? Well, the first thing I would say is communicate. Communicate these bottom line levers widely so that you help align your board, your key staff, your major donors, your constituents who impact what you do. Help them to understand what those levers are and why they matter. And then secondly, incorporate them as a litmus test for every decision you make regarding new opportunities. If you're spending time or money or additional resources, run it through a metric that says, does this pass muster? Does this pass the sniff test? Does this move our bottom line? So in this example, some of the questions you might ask would be like the ones you see on the slide. Does this help us raise funds? If Gem Friends was going to take on something else, they're going to ask, does this help us raise funds? Is it a cause that our current donor population would support and sustain? Is this meeting youth needs? Are there any youth needs that are put in jeopardy if we do this? And that's an important question. Sometimes we run off with a really, really great idea and don't realize that the person who's doing a very fundamental function is now distracted with this new role. And then we lose traction on something that's critical to our organization. You might ask, how does this improve helping us get to, the 5 steps? And how does this impact their post-program success? So those are some of the questions. And you can use this slide as kind of a guideline to help create your own bottom line questions. As an added bonus, in our work with Idaho nonprofits, Idaho Partners for Good has developed this decision rubric. And so that's coming up on the next slide. And as a Success Lab resource, we're gonna go the other, there you go. As a Success Lab resource, we're gonna include it in today's follow-up. At Idaho Partners for Good, we use this rubric as a client tool for top-level goal setting. It's a 3-tiered planning approach with templates to help you evaluate your SWOT, what's missing reports, and what's possible thinking. And when you hire us for this training, you'll get to know intimately what moves each lever to help you design effective strategies and tactical plans that will grow with you year after year. I really like looking through this list and, that last question. Is this the right time? Just because it's a good idea, just because it looks like it'll fit, it may not be the right time to do this. And it could be that that's a very critical question. So if it passes in everything else, make sure you spend a little bit of time on deciding, is this the right time for us to implement that strategy?
Can I add just a little bit more color to this, because I think it's super important for this discussion and this learning right now. And that is that, as we're, as we all work on the business of our nonprofit, we really need to identify and differentiate between whether there's a need for it and whether there's a demand for it. So this is a key differentiator that you have to think through, because part of what we tend to do is as leaders, we are constantly seeing the need around us. Nika, you see single moms all over the place, and you know this is a need. And yet the question that you really need, that we all need to keep asking is there a demand for it? Because in the nonprofit sector, we tend to just try to fill a gap and use a lot of resources. And then we realize, well, what we saw as a need isn't really demanded by our end user.
Absolutely. That's really good feedback. So let's just review for just a second and talk about step 1. Do you feel like you have what you need to figure out what your bottom line metric is? Does it make sense to go back to your mission statement and be able to pull out, who am I trying to serve? What am I trying to have be the ultimate outcome? And then
Kimbra, I thought that was a really practical activity that can be done at any level in in a nonprofit. So I do think that I'd say, you know, high fives to just doing that as a beginning for a board meeting is to have your board identify what that is.
Yeah, it's a great exercise for the board. And then finding those bottom line levers takes a little bit of time. But if you've got an executive committee, if you've got a strategic planning committee, someone who already looks at these things, that's a great exercise to take them through. Let's determine what is our bottom line. If we know what our bottom line metric is, what are the levers? What are the things that propel us in a healthy way? So those are always great questions to ask. And you know what, this decision rubric also works in reverse. If you've got some programs that feel like they're just a struggle or a strain on the ministry or the organization that you represent, take those programs through this decision rubric and find out, do they fit? Is it a struggle because it's not moving your bottom line? Do we need to shift something in there? So this decision rubric is not only for programs that are coming up, but it can also help you evaluate the programs that you're currently in if they're not producing the return on investment. I really like the idea of determining, is it sustainable and can it be replicated? Because growth a lot of times is about duplicating ourselves, replicating the good that we're doing. But if it's not sustainable, if it doesn't see a way to get to the point where it'll build its own momentum and carry it forward, we might be pushing the wrong rock up the hill, right? All right, well, I'm going to wrap up this segment then. We're going a little fast, but I'll give you back a couple minutes of your very, very busy days. Go to that last slide for me, Bethany. So bottom line metrics and levers are the grist that firmly seat the alignment between why and how. I am a big believer in everything being aligned. In the last workshop, we had one group on the left side of the canal building a bridge and another one on the right side building a tunnel and wasting resources all the way because never those two would meet. So getting aligned on what you're doing, why you're doing it, how you're doing it is really critical. And knowing your bottom line is what helps seat those the difference between the how and the why. When you build your metrics and your key performance indicators for goals that are around your bottom line levers in your nonprofit, you will strengthen your overall health and the trajectory of your organization. So with that, I'll open it up to questions, and then I'll give it back to Bethany.
Nika and Carly, question for the two of you. Good morning, Carly.
Good morning. Sorry, I was a little late. I was having coffee with a board member.
Oh, awesome. Awesome. Okay, so let's take this into a practical place. Nika and Carly, go ahead and put your mission statements into the chat. I'll
Okay.
put the mission statement for Idaho Partners for Good in there. And let's run through that activity really quick so we all know how to do it well. Okay. Okay, so Bethany, would you go back to the slide that had the information that Kimber presented, a couple more? Go back.
Couple, yeah.
Well, let's go
Here,
back.
let me unmute so you
Couple
can hear me
more.
talking. That
Yeah,
one
sorry.
or a couple more.
Back a little bit further. We're going to go back to identifying the target.
There we go.
Yeah. And so
Okay.
what we're looking here is, who are you serving? This is the first thing you want to identify, is who are you serving?
Single parents for Anna Grace Foundation.
Yeah, there you go.
Um, we're going through a lot of change here. We just got a new general director. It's huge test of an organization. Um, we so we're really working through all these questions right now, and we can all answer them a little differently. But from my perspective as development director, Opera Idaho serves the all Idaho communities and their families.
Mhm.
That's, I think, which is really broad and maybe too
It
broad.
is. I don't know. Some of them are. That's a really great challenge to have. And because when you have something that's super broad, it's really easy to go off target if you don't know what those bottom line levers are that really propel you forward. So that's really good. Again, in my former seat, I was able to tell people, it's like, we don't do puppies, we don't do children, it was not any one thing. It was really tough to identify. When people ask, what do you do? I would say, well, what do the churches do? We help them do that better. And that, so it could be a myriad of things. And so, yeah, Carly, you've hit on something that is probably fundamental to finding those bottom lines.
Yeah, and we have a lot of programming, a lot that some of it feels a little disjointed as far as who goes to what. So education, and then our professional choral ensemble, and our resident company, which is local artists, Opera in the Park, fundraisers, Opportunities.
Mhm.
It's so we really do have something for everyone, and that's what our season that we're about to announce is surrounded around, that theme, the season of change, a little something for everyone.
And again, I'm going to encourage you to, as you identify your permanent metrics, your permanent levers, look at your mission statement. And again, it could be, this might bring up to the board as like, wow, we need to solidify our mission so that we can encompass all of these programs. This breadth and depth of what we do might need to be better encapsulated in a stronger mission statement that covers that. So if you're having a tough time doing this, get in that room and ask that question. What would cease to exist if we cease to exist? What resources would go away? Blossom, who do you have as your identifying target?
So people who give, I mean, really what it comes down to, it's Idaho partners, people who give.
People who
Uh,
give.
But we can't, our mission and our vision are so tied together that you can't extract them and make sense of them individually.
Mm.
Have to tie them together in order to make a whole. So the reason we have the mission is because of our why, which is our vision, which really is the heart and soul of what we do, is develop stronger, healthier, better equipped nonprofits
Yeah.
so they can do more of what they do best.
Yeah.
So,
And that's a great point. And again, it's how it's structured and what makes sense to pull out, what do you actually do and who do you do it for? So let's go to the outcomes. I think you've got a pretty good handle on your who. What are the outcomes that you desire? If you had to pick the thing that you're going to drive all of your programs through, we do all these things. The trainings, the programs, the kids, the family, the larger, more professional. We do them so that what? What's your outcome?
We do them so that we can keep the classical art form opera alive and appreciated.
Okay.
And because music, we do it because music is a universal language, and that really has sustained us for so long. That answers it. I'm not sure it
Well,
does.
and I'm looking at what you wrote here, Carly. So I just highlighted on the chat here, foster wider acceptance and appreciation and enjoyment of opera. Right? I mean,
Mhm.
and all that encompasses. It goes on and does talk about, and that's where it'd be easy to kind of get distracted in there. But your bottom line, your outcome that you want is a wider acceptance and appreciation and enjoyment of opera. Boom. There you go. So there's your, for whom? Our community, right? So there's your bottom line metric. Our community having a wider acceptance, appreciation, and enjoyment of opera. It's why we exist. Now, what moves that lever then becomes the next questions that you spend some time with. Nika, as you look at yours, what's the number one outcome that you're looking for?
Part of what I didn't put on there was this statement of creating community, but also we want the single parents to know that they're not parenting alone, that they have a community they can reach out to. They have this organization they can come to for answers to questions.
Yeah. And the word I pulled out of what you said is empowering. Having done a stint as a single mom myself for 8 years, it was a chore. It was a chore to do it by myself. It was never, I don't think that was a job description that was ever meant to be done by one person, but it happens a lot where it's one person in there. And so that empowerment and resourcing to help single parents, I think that's one of the things I've loved about watching the evolution of the Anna Grace Foundation is the empowerment factor. So, is that the outcome? Can you measure that? And that would be the challenge, I think, to using a very big dynamic word like empowering is like, how do you measure it? How do I know that you've been empowered? I can equip. I think about if I give you galoshes and a raincoat and an umbrella, well, you have been equipped. Have I empowered you to not get wet? Only if you use that equipment. So, how do you measure it would be probably the question I would come back to. So I might work on that target just a little bit. You've got the single moms, that's nailed, but empowering them to what?
Empowering them to keep going and not give up.
Okay.
One of the challenges is that single parents tend to think that this is going to last forever, not thinking that the kids are going to turn 18 and leave, most of them.
Yeah.
But also empowering them to know that while they're in the middle of the single parenthood, that they can accomplish other things, even their own personal goals. So we have seen single parents start their own business. We have seen single parents change careers. And of course, we've seen some single parents get married.
Yeah. Yeah. Blossom, how about you? What's
Yeah,
the outcome?
our outcome is nonprofits that do more of what they do best.
And hence the reason we're here today. This is definitely a product of that desired outcome. Well, that was a good exercise. Thank you for bringing that forward, Blossom.
Yeah, I do think it's something that we can all get good at. And so whatever seat we're sitting in, whether it is our own nonprofit or with our nonprofit colleagues, that this is a super simple way to just get them started thinking about how to align everything under their mission and their vision.
We touched over it really quickly, Bethany. I'm sorry, I'm going to back you up just again. Can you go back to that Pareto principle? Is everyone familiar with this? Since we do have a couple of minutes, I want to just bring that up and encourage you. Go back a little bit further, the one with the 2 blue bubbles. There we go. Is everyone familiar with this concept, the 80-20 rule, and how it applies? So if you think about if you need something done, Do you tend to call the same 10 people for all 100 projects that you have? We tend to see, we see it in that respect. You know, when we go grocery shopping, bread, cheese, eggs, and milk. You know, they're the building blocks. They are the 20% of our shopping list, but it touches 80% of the meals that we make. And that's so we always have those real basics here. So what are the absolute basics that give you the most bang for your buck? You know, what is it? I'm just going to guess for the opera. Is it season ticket holders? Does that give you, because you sell it once and you have patrons coming to every event that you do? I don't know. You know, so that might be something that you can put a lot of emphasis on because it gets you have a low threshold of activity required for a longer term impact. You've got them for the whole season if they bought the ticket, right?
Definitely. I mean, income wise, that's not
That's true.
what sustains us. Individual contributions, charitable donations, grants. That's the only reason I'm sitting in this chair. Yeah, and right now we're trying so hard to launch our season and we're running into all sorts of problems. But yeah, people want to know, and we're getting the most questions right now too. You know, new director, new direction. When can I get my subscription? And we're like, we're trying.
Yeah. And the fact that people ask for it usually drives into what could bring you the best bang for your buck.
Well, and we don't have very many subscribers. I think we have a couple hundred, maybe. And that is something we want to change.
There you go. But again, what's the lever? Is the lever engaging people? You know, what moves that outcome? Is that the right thing? If the outcome, the desired outcome must be funding, well, offering your least margined ticket option is not going to be the thing I'd want to spend my money on. I would want to spend my time and energy on promoting the thing that I get the most money for doing. You know, the same thing is true. We had an interesting conversation about galas, and there's a lot of times that nonprofits will spend a ton of time and energy and money for one night, when the reality is the people we've invited have probably already got the same set amount of money in mind, and they're going to give that amount of money, whether you have a denim and diamonds or you have a chicken buffet or you have a brown bag sandwich kind of an event. The reality is you can major in the minors in things like events and lose a lot of valuable resources that you could, the bottom line is you're probably going to get the same thing. So look at what is it that gets you the most bang for your buck. For most events, it's butts in seats. It doesn't matter. You know, and then you got to go deeper and ask, do we have the right butts in the seat? So if you're selling tables, chances are you've got one or two donors and a lot of their friends. But if you're selling individual tickets, each one of those people that's bought a ticket is buying to play, right? So you know, it's just thinking a little bit different. Which of those, what is going to get you the most return for your effort? So just, you know, just add that principle in there. But are there any other areas? You can look at this in terms of your staffing. You can look at it in terms of your effectiveness of your programs to meeting your mission. You know, which one of these can you put a little bit of effort into and get a big result? And which programs are demanding a ton of your time, but not really moving your bottom line? Those are the first ones to cut. Right? Okay. I'm gonna pause there. Bethany, thank you so much for letting us bounce around like that. I really appreciate you being the driver today. We'll take it back to last questions, and I'm going to just turn it over to you.
So I'm going to go ahead and launch our final poll here today about what you've learned during this session. I'm also going to post the link for, post the link for where you can find the recording of today and our past nonprofit success labs, and then a link of where you can register for our upcoming sessions. I want to thank you for spending some time with us this morning. Nonprofit Success Lab is brought to you by Idaho Partners for Good. If you value the expertise of Kimbra or maybe some of our past presenters, consider sharing about our consulting services with other organizations, or if you can benefit from that as your individual organizations, we'd love to come and help and give you some personalized services to help meet the needs of your organization. Our next month, we have Connie Miller, as you see. Oops. Sorry, I wasn't going through my slides there. Next month, we have Connie Miller, and she is going to do a session for us on about building trust, support, and accountability between the board and the CEO. This is the first in a series about building accountability between board and staff of an organization. So our next one is on June 13th. Same time, 9:30, and that second link in the chat there for events will bring you to the place where you can register for that, so you get notified and a reminder that it is happening. If we don't have any more questions, Kimbra can maybe hang around here for another couple minutes if you have an individual question, but I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording, and thank you for spending the morning with us.
Thanks, everybody.